It's easy to trust God when everything is going great, but it's an entirely different story trusting God in the difficult times. How do we know God is working, even in those spiritually dark times? How do we know He's working in all circumstances in our life?
Up until a number of years ago, I dealt with the trials in my life by pulling the proverbial covers over my head. I did everything I could to ignore them. The problem is, it never worked. While I pretended to disregard the mess, it was all I could think about. I became preoccupied with my difficulties and felt paralyzed by my circumstances. I felt hopeless and alone, certain God was nowhere to be found. How about you? But it was in those dark, difficult times in my life that I learned God hadn't left me at all, that He'd been with me all along. It was in the pain of a chronic illness that bulldozed its way into my life, wrecking everything in its path, where I learned that it truly is possible to have peace and pain at the very same time. But how do we get there? How do we stop suffocating from all the challenges in our life? How do we get up every morning with the strength to keep going? And why should we trust God in the difficult times?
Before we can begin trusting God in the tough times, we first need to understand some basic truths. Things that are hard to remember when everything around us is falling apart. With the fall of Adam and Eve in the garden, our world is now full of sin. It doesn't mean God has forgotten us, nor does it mean His love for us has changed. In fact, it couldn't be further from the truth. Because of this, the world in which we live today is not the world as God intended it to be. It is, in a very real sense, a defective and abnormal world. God loves us unconditionally. There's nothing we do that will lessen it, nor is there anything we can do to increase it. His love is there nonetheless. And since God loves us unconditionally, He will never let anything destroy us, nor does He want us to stay in the pit of that pain. It doesn't mean that we'll go through life without trials and difficulties. It means that He's with us the whole time, using the brokenness to help us grow spiritually. God will never waste our tough times. He'll use them to bring us closer to Him, to teach us how to rely fully on Him. But we must be willing to say, "Teach me, Lord, show me what I can learn in this situation." Trusting God is not about ignoring your feelings or reality. It is not pretending that everything is okay when it isn't. Trusting God is living a life of belief in and obedience to God even when it's difficult. Let's get this out of the way. Trusting God in dark times isn't about walking around with a smile plastered on your face, pretending nothing is wrong. It's not about acting like everything in your world is all shiny and rainbows. Trusting God in the difficult times is about walking through life with Him and being honest about your feelings. It's about inviting Him into your challenges and knowing that even if something doesn't turn out the way you want, God is still good and will always have your best interest at heart. Trusting God in the dark times is learning how to say, "Not my will, but yours be done." The beautiful truth about God's unconditional love for us is that no matter how broken or out of control life feels, it's never too late to invite Him in.